I never imagined I'd be sitting in my living room staring at the empty screen of my bank account, feeling like the rug had been ripped out from under me. My name is David, and for 30 years, I dedicated my life to my job at the auto plant. I woke up every morning at 5 a.m., braving the cold winters and the humid summers, because I believed that hard work would secure a future for me and my family. Every hour of overtime, every dollar I saved, was meant to build a life where I could one day relax, enjoy the simple pleasures: fishing trips, backyard barbecues, maybe even a trip to Europe I'd always promised myself. My wife, Claire, was the love of my life. We met in college, back when everything seemed possible and the future was wide open. We shared dreams, whispered hopes in the dead of night, and I trusted her completely. She was the one who managed our finances, while I took care of the day-to-day grind. I thought it was a fair division. She was always better with numbers, after all. But that morning, everything changed. I'd just turned 55, and I was thinking about finally slowing down, maybe even retiring early. I logged in to check my retirement fund, expecting to see the familiar numbers that had given me comfort for years. Instead, there was nothing. Zero. Gone. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake, a glitch in the system. My hands shook as I refreshed the page again and again, hoping the numbers would come back. But they didn't. My throat went dry, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into a void I couldn't see the bottom of. I called Claire immediately, my voice cracking. "Claire, there's something wrong with our retirement fund. It's empty. Do you know what's going on?" She was quiet for a moment. Too quiet. Then she said, almost like she was reading from a script, "David, I needed that money. I thought you'd understand." The words didn't make sense. I felt like my brain was trying to process them, but they just bounced around, refusing to settle. "You needed it, Claire? That's our future. What did you do?" She wouldn't meet my eyes, even though she was just across the room. "I thought I could fix it before you noticed," she said, her voice trembling. "I had some debts, things you didn't know about." Suddenly, everything felt like it was spinning out of control. The woman I'd shared my life with had betrayed me, taken everything I'd worked for, and left me standing there with nothing but questions and an emptiness in my chest. My hands were clenched into fists, my heart pounding like a war drum. I didn't know whether to scream or cry, so I just stood there, stunned. As the truth crashed down around me like a wave, I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying our conversation, trying to understand how the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, could have done something like this. My mind was a storm of questions. How long had she been lying to me? How much debt was she hiding? What else didn't I know? I'd always trusted Claire completely, never thought I needed to watch her, to question her decisions. But as I lay there in the darkness, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan, I realized how blind I'd been. I thought about all those late nights she spent at the computer, claiming she was working on our taxes or handling bills. I thought about the credit card statements I never saw, the quiet phone calls she always stepped outside to take. My stomach twisted into knots. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I went to work, put on my uniform, and punched in like I always did. Everything felt different. My mind wasn't on the job, it was stuck back at home, stuck on the cold look in Claire's eyes when she told me she needed that money. I kept thinking about our future, the future I thought was secure, and how it had been stolen from me in one night. At lunch, I found myself staring at my sandwich, not tasting a single bite. My coworker Tom sat across from me, chattering about his fishing trip last weekend, but his words sounded muffled, like he was underwater. I just nodded along, my head a million miles away. I decided I needed answers. That evening, when I got home, I asked Claire again, calmly this time. "Claire, how much did you take? How long have you been doing this?" She wouldn't give me a straight answer. She just kept saying, "I'm sorry, David. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could fix it." But the more she said it, the more it sounded like an excuse. My gut told me there was more to this than she was letting on. I started digging. I went through our mail, searching for anything that didn't make sense. I found unopened credit card bills shoved in the back of a drawer, statements with balances that made my head spin. Tens of thousands of dollars in debt I didn't even know existed. I called the bank the next day, trying to get information. The woman on the other end was polite but firm. "Mr. Andrews, your account was emptied by an authorized user," she said. There were several large transfers made over the past 6 months. 6 months. My chest tightened. All those nights she said she was paying bills, she'd been draining everything we'd built together. I felt like a fool. Like I'd been living in a house of cards and someone had just flicked it over. I didn't confront her that night. I needed to be sure to have more than just my gut feeling. I started watching her more closely, where she went, what she did. She still acted like everything was normal, making dinner, folding laundry, smiling that same tired smile. But I could see it in her eyes now, the flicker of fear every time I mentioned money. I found a receipt one night tucked into her purse from a jewelry store I'd never even heard of. Gold bracelet, nearly $5,000. My blood ran cold. We'd never been the type to spend money on expensive things. If she was buying jewelry like that, what else was she doing? I started to wonder if it was just debt she was hiding or something worse. My mind went to dark places. Was there someone else? Another man she was spending this money on? I hated myself for even thinking it, but the doubt was there now, coiled around my heart like a snake. I tried to push the thoughts away, to tell myself I was overreacting. But every time I looked at her, I saw that same flicker of guilt, and I knew something was very, very wrong. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay awake, listening to the rise and fall of her breathing beside me, and felt like I was living with a stranger. The woman I'd built my life with had become a mystery I couldn't solve, and I was terrified of what I might find when I finally uncovered the truth. By the third sleepless night, something shifted in me. The shock and pain were still there, but they hardened into something sharper: determination. I realized that if I kept living in this haze of doubt, I'd never find the truth. So I decided to take control. I started by combing through every piece of paper in our house. Every drawer, every file, every dusty old folder. I found statements. From bank accounts I didn't even know existed, accounts in Claire's name only. Some with balances that had been wiped clean, just like my retirement fund. I found loan documents with my forged signature. Loans she'd taken out behind my back. Late one night, I finally found the proof that confirmed my worst fears. Claire had left her laptop open on the kitchen table, and as she slept upstairs, I sat there in the glow of the screen, my heart pounding. My hands trembled as I clicked through her emails. I found long threads with a man named Mark. They weren't just about money, they were about weekends away, secret dinners, hotel rooms. The kind of messages that cut so deep you feel like you're bleeding inside. One line from him stuck with me, burned into my mind. "I can't wait until you're free of him, baby. We'll have everything we ever wanted." My world went still. I stared at that line for what felt like hours. My wife hadn't just stolen my money, she'd been planning to leave me for someone else, using my hard-earned savings to build a new life with another man. I closed the laptop quietly, my body shaking. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her that night. I was done reacting. From that moment on, I was going to be deliberate, careful, strategic. I took pictures of every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence. I backed them up on a secure drive she didn't know about. I even made copies and stashed them at work just in case. My life felt like a crime scene, and I was collecting all the evidence I could before it was too late. I started watching Claire even more closely. But I hid my suspicion behind a calm facade. At dinner, I'd smile and nod while she talked about her day, my mind racing the whole time. Every word she said felt like another lie, but I didn't let her see that. I wanted her to think I was still the clueless husband, still in the dark. I also started reaching out to people I trusted: my brother James, my best friend Mike. Late at night, I'd call them from my car in the driveway, just to make sure Claire wouldn't hear. I told them everything. They were as shocked as I was, but they had my back. Mike even offered to hire a private investigator if I needed it. I didn't say yes, but the offer gave me comfort. It reminded me that I wasn't alone. One night after Claire went to bed, I called James. "I don't know what to do, man. I whispered, my voice cracking. She's been lying to me for months, maybe years. She took everything. James was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You're not going to let her get away with this, are you?" "No," I said, and I meant it. I'm done being the guy who just lets things happen to him. In those days, I felt like I was two people. There was the David who went to work, who nodded politely at Claire's small talk, who kept up the illusion of normalcy. And then there was the David, who spent his nights planning, gathering, preparing. I felt the weight of it all in my chest, but I also felt a cold clarity that was new to me. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was hunting for the truth. I started tracking her spending more closely, using old statements and new charges I found in the mail. There was a pattern, small withdrawals that added up to thousands over time, transfers to accounts I'd never seen. I followed the trail, each piece fitting together like a puzzle. I also started asking quiet questions at the bank. I told them I was worried about identity theft, and they gave me copies of the withdrawal slips. Seeing her handwriting on those slips, withdrawal after withdrawal, it was like a punch to the gut, but it also fueled my resolve. She couldn't deny it anymore. The truth was in black and white. One night I sat in my garage with a single lamp on, surrounded by stacks of paper. I felt the tears welling up, but I blinked them back. I told myself this was the last time I'd let her see me cry. From here on out, I was going to fight back. I knew I couldn't confront her until I was ready, till I had every piece of the puzzle, until she couldn't wiggle out of it with more lies. So I kept gathering, kept watching, kept waiting. And every night, as I lay in bed next to her, I felt the cold distance growing between us, like a canyon that couldn't be crossed. But even as my heart ached, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I'd worked for, not without a fight. The night I decided to confront Claire was cold and clear, the kind of night where every sound seemed sharper, every breath visible in the air. I sat in the living room, surrounded by the evidence I'd gathered, printouts, screenshots, bank statements, and those gut-wrenching emails. The weight of it all felt like a storm pressing down on my chest. Claire came home late, as she often did these days. She walked through the door with a practiced smile, hanging up her coat like nothing was wrong. But I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes when she noticed me sitting there, waiting. "David," she said carefully, setting her purse down. "Why are you up so late?" I didn't answer her right away. I let the silence stretch between us, let it grow heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice calm but cold. "Sit down, Claire. We need to talk." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the door as if she was already planning an escape. But she sat, folding her hands in her lap like a child caught sneaking. "Candy," I picked up the first stack of papers, bank statements, marked in red ink. "Do you know what this is?" I asked quietly. She swallowed, her eyes wide. "David, don't lie to me." I cut her off, my voice sharp as a blade. "I've spent weeks digging through everything. The retirement fund you stole, the credit cards you maxed out, the accounts you opened without telling me." I dropped the papers in front of her, the pages fanning out like a deck of cards. "I know it all, Claire." Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to. "Get this bad? I needed the money, David. I thought I could fix it before I found out." My voice broke. "Claire, you stole our future. You didn't just take money, you took every plan we ever made." She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. "David, please." I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. "You didn't know how to tell me because you were too busy lying to me," I spat. My chest felt tight, my heart hammering in my ribcage. I picked up another stack of papers, the emails, held them out to her like a weapon. "And this?" My voice was a whisper, but the anger in it made her flinch. "Who's Mark? Claire, tell me." She stared at the papers like they were poison. He's just a friend. Don't lie to me," I shouted, slamming my fist on the table. The sound echoed in the room. "I've read every word, Claire. The hotels, the plans to run away together. You were going to leave me with nothing." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." You thought what?" said my voice trembling. "That you could drain my life savings, run away with another man, and I'd never know?" Her sobs turned to quiet hiccups, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I sat back in my chair, breathing hard. For a moment, the only sound was her crying. Then I stood up, slowly, and walked to the safe in the corner of the room. I spun the dial, feeling the click of the lock with every turn. When I opened it, I pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, holding it up. She looked up through her tears, her brow furrowing. "What is that?" "It's what you didn't know about," I said. My voice was calm now, almost eerily so. "The second retirement account. The one I never told you about." She blinked, her mouth opening in shock. You had another account?" I nodded. "I did. I set it up years ago. Call it a hunch. Or maybe I just knew that one day I might need a backup plan." I dropped the envelope on the table in front of her. "You didn't take everything, Claire? Took a lot, but you didn't take me down with you." She stared at the envelope like it was a ghost. "David, I didn't know." "No, you didn't," I said, my voice like ice. "And that's why I'm done. I'm done pretending. I'm done forgiving." I stood up straight, looking down at her with all the pain and betrayal burning in my chest. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. The divorce papers are ready. We'll get what you're legally entitled to, but not a penny more." "What's left of my future?" She reached for me, her eyes pleading. "David, please don't do this. We can fix this." "No," I said firmly. "We can't. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." For a moment, we just stared at each other. Her face was red and wet with tears, but I felt nothing but a hollow ache in my chest. I turned away from her, my shoulders squared. I felt the weight of everything that had happened, but I also felt something else: relief. Like I'd finally stopped drowning. As I walked out of the room, I heard her sobbing behind me, but I didn't look back. I didn't know her that. Not anymore. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I slept in the guest room, the door locked behind me. And for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, knowing I had taken back control of my life. Tried to steal was still my Nand. I wasn't about to let her take it away again, in the days that followed. The fallout was swift and brutal. Claire tried to plead with me, sending text messages filled with apologies and promises, but I didn't respond. I'd already made my decision, and nothing she said could change the way I saw her. Word spread quickly. Our friends and family, people who'd known us as the perfect couple, were stunned when they found out the truth. I didn't go around telling everyone, but the divorce papers spoke for themselves. Claire's betrayal wasn't just a private. Wound in Amorit was out in the open. I heard that Mark vanished the moment Claire's world began to crumble. He didn't want to be tied to a scandal. Didn't want to be part of the mess he helped create. The last I heard, he'd blocked her number and disappeared into the shadows. Some poetic justice, I supposed. Claire moved out of the house within a week of the confrontation. She packed her things in silence, her face pale and drawn. I watched her go with a heavy heart, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The woman I once loved was gone, whether she walked out that door or not. She was already gone. The legal process moved quickly. My lawyer made sure every dollar she'd stolen was documented, every secret account exposed. The judge didn't have much sympathy for Claire. She was ordered to repay what she could, though I knew I'd never see most of it. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about making sure she couldn't take anything else from me. As for me, I started to feel like I could finally breathe again. The house was quiet, too quiet sometimes, but it was my space now. I'd come home from work and sit in the living room, surrounded by the echoes of a life I thought I'd shared with someone else. There was pain there, sure, but there was also a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Every once in a while, I'd catch myself thinking about her, about the way things used to be, about the laughter and the warmth we shared before the lies. I'd feel that old ache in my chest, that hollow sadness. But I reminded myself that those memories were just that, memories. They didn't define who I was anymore. One night I took a long walk by the lake near our house. The air was cool and fresh, the stars bright above me. I felt the weight of the past months lifting off my shoulders, bit by bit. The betrayal still hurt, maybe it always would, but I'd taken back my power. I'd faced the truth no matter how ugly it was, and I'd walked through it with my head held high as I stood there. Watching the ripples on the water, I realized something. I wasn't just a man who'd been betrayed. I was a man who'd survived, and that was enough for now. In the weeks after the divorce was finalized, I began to reclaim pieces of myself I'd almost forgotten. My days took on a new rhythm, one that wasn't defined by someone else's secrets. I woke up each morning to quiet sunlight filtering through the curtains, the house no longer echoing with lies, and in that quiet, I found a sense of calm. Hadn't felt in years. I spent more time outdoors, rediscovering simple pleasures. On weekends, I'd drive out to the lake with my fishing gear, casting my line and letting the cool breeze wash over me. Those early mornings, with the mist rising, off the water, felt like a promise that life could start fresh. I found comfort in the stillness. In the gentle lap of the waves against the shore, I also started reconnecting with the people who mattered most. My brother James came over for dinner one night, and as we sat on the back porch with a couple of beers, he looked at me with a mix of pride and relief. "You're a different man, David," he said. "Stronger. I know it's been hell, but you're coming out the other side." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words in my bones. Yeah, it's not easy, but I'm getting there. Work became more than just a job, became an anchor. My coworkers, who had once been just people I saw every day, became a second family. They didn't pry into the details, but they saw the change in me. They saw a man who wasn't broken, but rebuilding. Evenings were my own now. I started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. I'd curl up in the armchair by the window with a novel, the quiet turning into a friend instead of an enemy. I filled the house with music-hold records that made me smile, that reminded me of who I was before everything fell apart. I found peace in small things. I was cooking a meal just for myself and savoring each bite. Watching the sunset from the porch, knowing that tomorrow was mine to shape. There was a freedom in that. Freedom in knowing that I didn't have to carry someone else's lies anymore, of course. The hurt still lingered sometimes. Some nights I'd wake up in the dark, the memory of her betrayal flaring like a wound. But each time it got a little easier to let go. Each time I reminded myself that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to live anyway. And I did live. I found new hobbies, new ways to fill my time. I even took that trip to Europe I'd always dreamed of, standing on the cobblestone streets of old cities and feeling a quiet wonder in my chest. I let myself be amazed again. Let myself hope. Looking back, I realized that betrayal doesn't define you, it reveals you. It showed me how strong I could be, how much I could endure and still keep going. It taught me that trust is precious and that my worth isn't tied to someone else's choices. So here I am, standing in the kitchen of my quiet house, a fresh cup of coffee in my hands and the morning light warm on my face. The future isn't what I thought it would be, but it's mine now. And that, more than anything, is enough. Standing here now, I've learned that betrayal doesn't just shatter the world you knew, it forces you to find the courage to build a new one. In the darkness of those nights when I felt like I was drowning, I found something I never knew I had. The quiet, unyielding strength to stand back up. I realized that trust isn't about blind faith. It's about choosing carefully where you place your heart. And when that trust is broken, it's not the end of your story. It's a painful chapter, yes, but it doesn't have to be the last one. You get to decide what happens next. For a long time, I thought of myself as a victim, someone who'd been robbed of everything he worked for, someone whose life had been appended by someone else's choices. But I see it differently now. Yes, I was betrayed, but I wasn't destroyed. I'm still here, still standing, and that's a victory in itself. I've also learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness is simply letting go of the weight of someone else's actions. It's not about excusing the hurt, but about refusing to let it poison your heart any longer. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Your worth isn't defined by what someone else did to you. It's defined by how you rise from it, how you take back your power and choose to keep living. It's in every small step forward, every quiet moment of peace you carve out of the wreckage, As I look back on the man I was, the man I became, and the man I am now, I see a journey that was never about the money or the betrayal. It was about finding out who I really am when everything else falls away. And in that, I found something worth holding on to. So if you're ever standing at the edge of your own heartbreak, remember this: you are stronger than the lies you've been told. You are worth more than the trust that was broken. And no matter how lost you feel, there is always a way forward. Because in the end, we are not defined by the betrayal we endure. We are defined by the courage it takes to keep going.